The Wanaar Revelation, a sci-fi thriller, by Isaac Petrov, Chapter 1, The Sky Shudders. The world changed at precisely 2:17 a.m. UTC. Across the planet, from the crowded streets of Tokyo to the silent deserts of Namibia, people stopped, frozen in place, as something foreign yet deeply familiar entered their minds.
We are the Wanaar.
The message was not spoken. It was not heard with ears or transmitted by any technology known to humankind. It was a presence, an overwhelming consciousness that pressed against every human mind, resonating inside them like an ancient memory suddenly remembered. In the Pentagon's underground war room, General Marcus Holloway gripped the edge of the conference table as his subordinates screamed, clutching their heads. His own vision blurred as something vast and unknowable reached into his thoughts. A voice, calm yet undeniable, spoke.
We have waited long enough.
In a Moscow bunker, Vladimir Petrov, the head of Russia's nuclear division, fell to his knees, his pulse hammering. Every monitor in the room, every screen displaying global satellite data, flickered and then went dark. His generals shouted in panic as the great arsenal of Russian missiles fell silent, their launch codes mysteriously scrambled. Across the Atlantic, in the White House Situation Room, President Caroline Holt's coffee cup shattered as she bolted upright, eyes wide, sweat dripping from her forehead. Around her, advisors gripped their heads, their expressions morphing from confusion to sheer primal terror.
Your world is failing. Your leaders are blind. The warnings have been ignored.
As if synchronized across the planet, hundreds of thousands of military screens, civilian broadcasts, and personal devices were abruptly hijacked. The same image appeared on every screen, a great black abyss, and then something emerged. A city. It was impossible. A metropolis beneath the sea, shimmering under the crushing weight of the Mariana Trench. Structures of dark metal, organic in design, pulsed with eerie blue light, forming vast towers that stretched up toward the unreachable surface. The water above it did not crash down but remained suspended, held back by an invisible force field, revealing an entire civilization hidden beneath the world's deepest abyss.
We are the Wanaar. We are the last remnants of a civilization older than your history. We came from the stars long before your kind crawled from the mud. And we have watched you destroy yourselves for long enough.
In Beijing, London, Paris, and Johannesburg, world leaders stared in mute horror as the images played out across their war rooms. Their military bases had already been compromised. In the sky above key locations, Area 51, the Russian steppe, the Pacific near Guam, the depths of Siberia, the unidentified aerial phenomena that pilots had whispered about for decades appeared in force. Silver, gravity-defying craft materialized in the night sky, pulsing with strange gravity-bending energy. They were not attacking, they were warning.
You will disarm, you will change course, or we will stop you.
And just like that, the presence vanished, the connection between minds severed, leaving the world in utter silence. But the silence did not last long, because in missile silos across the world, warheads began to self-destruct. Chapter 2, The Unseen Hand. Panic spread like wildfire. Within minutes of the Wanaar's message, the world's most secure military installations were under siege, not by soldiers, but by silence. At Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, a red-faced general slammed his fist against a control panel. A terrified technician wiped sweat from his brow.
Sir, all the ICBMs are offline. They're dead.
The general turned to his communications officer, who was frantically typing into a console.
Contact Strack, I need to speak to NORAD now.
But the officer's face was ashen.
Sir, nothing is transmitting. All global military satellites are down.
The same scenario played out across Russia, China, France, the UK, Israel, India, and North Korea. Every nuclear nation. At a military command bunker deep beneath the Kremlin, Vladimir Petrov, Russia's nuclear chief, was screaming at his staff.
Check the backup systems. Override the locks.
One of his engineers, barely able to control his shaking hands, pointed to the screen.
Sir, they're not just shut down, they're gone. The warheads themselves.
Boom. From the Arctic Circle to the Pacific, military satellites registered spontaneous nuclear detonations deep underground. Warheads stored in hardened bunkers, some buried beneath mountains, others encased in layers of concrete, were vanishing in blinding pulses of light. No radiation, no fallout, just the White House emergency meeting. President Caroline Holt sat in the Situation Room, staring at the table, her mind racing. Her Chief of Staff, CIA Director Alan Greaves, and Secretary of Defense Michael Stokes were arguing furiously.
They hacked our systems, our most secure military systems. This is an act of war.
Stokes roared. Greaves shot back.
If they wanted war, we'd already be dead.
Holt raised a hand, silencing them.
Who the hell are they?
She said, her voice level but laced with tension. A new voice entered the room.
I think I can answer that.
Every head turned as Dr. Evelyn Dawson, a leading marine biologist and deep-sea researcher, walked in. She carried a thick binder filled with decades-old reports, satellite images, and ancient Aboriginal legends.
We've known about them for centuries. We just didn't listen.
She tossed an old Aboriginal cave painting onto the table. The Wanaar, their elongated, almost human forms, stood alongside strange symbols. They were depicted descending into the ocean on beams of light. 60,000 years ago, deep below the ocean, beneath the crushing black depths of the Mariana Trench, the city of the Wanaar glowed softly in the abyss. Structures not built but grown rose from the seabed, formed of a dark, pulsating metal-like substance. Energy rippled through them, sending waves of blue light across the cavernous cityscape. The Elder Council of the Wanaar observed holographic projections of Earth's military leaders. The humans were reacting as predicted. Panic, denial, aggression. A tall figure, Kelmar, leader of the council, projected his thoughts to the others.
They resist change, but the choice is no longer theirs.
The others nodded.
Kelmar raised his arm, and the Wanaar's powerful anti-gravity crafts, the UAPs feared by Earth's governments, moved to their next targets.
Washington, D.C., the demonstration. It was a clear morning in the U.S. Capitol when it happened. As citizens hurried through their daily routines, a shimmering distortion appeared above the White House. Not a spaceship, not a weapon, something far more terrifying. A hole, a gaping, gravity-bending tear in the sky, showing the black depths of the Mariana Trench. For the first time in human history, an underwater city, far beneath the Earth's surface, was visible in broad daylight, suspended above the White House like a mirror into another world. The sky shuddered, the air vibrated, and then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the portal vanished.
Decide wisely. This is your last chance.
Chapter 3. The Fracture Point. The world had witnessed the impossible. Every nation, every government, every ordinary person on the street had seen the sky itself rip open to reveal the truth. Humanity was not alone. The Wanaar were real. For the first time since the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, every major world power was in a state of pure crisis. The Pentagon, Crisis Command, General Marcus Holloway had never seen this much fear in one room. The President, Joint Chiefs, and National Security Advisors had gathered in a classified underground bunker, their expressions oscillating between confusion, disbelief, and rage.
We need to strike back,
barked Secretary of Defense Stokes. President Caroline Holt shot him a look of pure disbelief.
Strike back at what exactly? They didn't fire a single shot.
That doesn't mean they won't.
General Holloway cleared his throat.
We have no way to counter their technology. Every nuclear nation has confirmed.
He hesitated, then sighed.
They've lost operational control of their warheads. The nukes are gone.
The room fell deathly silent. The president leaned forward.
Are you telling me the United States no longer has nuclear capabilities?
Holloway nodded grimly.
Yes, ma'am, and neither does Russia, China, or anyone else.
Jesus Christ.
CIA Director Alan Greaves ran a hand through his hair.
That's it then. Nuclear war is off the table.
But not everyone in the room saw this as a good thing.
Not all of them are gone,
he said. All eyes turned to him. He smiled slightly.
Some of our warheads are still in play, hidden from their interference.
Moscow, the rogue faction, in the heart of Russia's most secretive black site facility, an underground nuclear silo still remained operational. Vladimir Petrov stared at the last working screen in his entire bunker. It displayed coordinates, warheads that had somehow been shielded from the Wanaar's interference. A uniformed general stood beside him, smoking heavily.
This is our moment, Vladimir.
Petrov didn't respond. The general leaned in.
We are Russia. We do not bow to those who claim to be gods. We strike now.
Petrov exhaled, staring at the blinking launch codes. It was suicide. But he had been raised to believe in strength above all else. And the Wanaar had just humiliated them. His fingers hovered over the authorization panel. The world held its breath. And then, the lights flickered. A shadow passed through the room, even though no one was there. And suddenly, standing in the middle of the war room, was one of them. A Wanaar, Kelmar. They had come. Petrov's heart stopped. The general reached for his sidearm. He never got the chance to fire. Kelmar lifted a single hand, and the general froze mid-motion, his body locked in place. Petrov fell to his knees as his mind cracked open, like a dam bursting. Memories that were not his flooded his consciousness. He saw Mars, thousands of years ago, its red deserts full of life, its sky once blue, its oceans teeming with creatures now lost to time. He saw the Exodus, the journey to Earth, the schism between the Wanaar and their breakaway human kin. And he saw something else, a future, a burning Earth, a civilization crumbling in nuclear fire, a final war that humanity could not survive.
You think yourselves powerful, but your weapons are nothing to us. You threaten all life, including your own.
Petrov's hand shook uncontrollably as the Wanaar elder lowered his hand, releasing the frozen general.
You will not strike, because we will not let you.
And then, in the blink of an eye, he was gone. The launch codes. Petrov sank into his chair, his face pale as death. Russia had lost, and for the first time in his life, he was relieved. Beijing, London, the choice. The Wanaar had made their final move. Every military leader, every president, prime minister, and dictator received the same telepathic message.
The time for negotiations was over. Your world is on the edge of the abyss. We have done what we must to ensure its survival. The choice is now yours. Accept peace, or continue to resist and face the consequences.
In China, the Politburo debated in whispers, their most powerful weapon neutralized. In London, Parliament was split. In France, a crisis meeting ended in shocked silence. And in the United States, a message was drafted. A global broadcast, the first admission in human history that Earth was not the only civilization on this planet. President Caroline Holt stepped before the cameras. She took a breath, and then she spoke the truth. Chapter 4, the broadcast. The world held its breath. Across every major city, from New York to New Delhi, from Sydney to São Paulo, televisions, radios, and digital streams flickered to life, overriding all other programming. A single image appeared. President Caroline Holt, standing at the White House press podium, flanked by her highest-ranking officials. Her face was pale but composed. She had rehearsed this moment, but now that it was happening, the weight of it pressed down on her like a tidal wave. She inhaled.
My fellow citizens of the world.
She paused. The words felt surreal, but she forced herself forward.
Tonight I come before you not just as the President of the United States, but as a representative of humanity.
She swallowed hard.
We are not alone.
A silence deeper than any the planet had ever known spread through every home, every street, every war room.
An ancient civilization known as the Wanaar has made contact. They are not invaders. They are not conquerors. They are...
She hesitated. What word could possibly describe them?
Our ancestors.
Gasps echoed through living rooms, military bases, and press rooms.
They arrived on this planet long before our recorded history, escaping the collapse of their world. Over thousands of years, they built a hidden society deep beneath our oceans, far beyond our reach, watching as our civilizations rose and fell. Until now, they remained silent.
She took a deep breath.
But today they have spoken, and they have issued us an ultimatum.
She steadied herself before delivering the words that would define history.
We must disarm our nuclear weapons. We must change course on climate destruction, or we will face consequences beyond our control.
Social media imploded. The Wanaar reel was already trending. In homes, offices, and public squares, people screamed, cried, or fell into stunned silence. And in the war rooms of the world, powerful men and women made choices that would decide humanity's fate.
The opposition.
Not everyone believed. Not everyone accepted. Deep within a classified underground bunker, a gathering of military leaders, defense contractors, and intelligence operatives watched the broadcast with cold expressions.
A grizzled General Douglas Haynes turned to the others. Are we really letting aliens dictate global policy?
A billionaire defense executive scoffed.
No one tells us how to run the world. No one.
A smirking senator leaned forward.
Maybe it's time we showed these Wanaar just how dangerous humanity can be.
The room was filled with nods of agreement. These men had made their fortunes on war, and they were not about to let it end. The Wanaar's next move. Deep beneath the Mariana Trench, the Council of the Wanaar watched Earth's reaction. Kelmar turned to his advisors.
They are divided.
His second-in-command, Avan, studied the holograms of human society fracturing.
Some will listen, some will not.
Kelmar nodded.
Then we will show them why they must.
He turned toward the control hub, where a dozen Wanaar operatives stood before a massive energy core, its swirling antimatter pulsing with untold power.
Target the next location.
The operatives bowed, and then across the Earth, power grids flickered. Airports shut down, military bases lost all command functions, and for the first time in history, Wall Street went dark. The collapse begins. A full global blackout lasted 16 minutes. 16 minutes where the world felt what true powerlessness was. When the lights returned, a final message rang through the minds of every person alive.
This is not a negotiation. This is your last chance.
And just like that, the fate of humanity hung in the balance. Chapter 5. The breaking point. For 16 minutes, the world had gone dark. For 16 minutes, every government, every business, every military force lost all control, on the brink of either surrender or rebellion. The White House, divisions form. President Caroline Holt slammed her fists on the Situation Room table, her face twisted in frustration.
I need to know how this happened. I need to know how they shut down the entire world's infrastructure in under a second.
The room was silent. Finally, CIA Director Alan Greaves spoke, his voice quiet.
Because, Madam President, they're beyond us.
Holt slowly sat down.
So you're telling me we have no way to fight back?
Greaves hesitated. And then, across from him, Defense Secretary Michael Stokes leaned forward, his voice cold.
There's always a way.
The room fell silent again. Holt frowned.
What are you suggesting?
Stokes glanced at General Holloway, then at a civilian contractor sitting in the shadows. Finally, he spoke.
We still have weapons they haven't found. Weapons that can level entire continents. If we deploy them before the Wanaar can stop us, we might still have a chance.
Holt's stomach twisted.
You're talking about the black sites, aren't you?
Stokes nodded. The president leaned back, rubbing her temples. She knew about the black sites, highly classified locations where next-generation weapons were being tested. Weapons designed to fight extraterrestrial threats, even before anyone believed they existed. And now, those weapons were their last, desperate hope. Holt took a slow breath.
You're suggesting we strike them first? Start a war with a civilization that just neutralized every nuke on the planet?
Stokes smiled.
Madam President, it's the only war we might actually win.
Beijing, the secret alliance. Halfway across the world, in a high-security bunker beneath the Forbidden City, China's top military officials were watching the same footage. The Wanaar's warning, the blackout, the American president's response. The room was tense. Finally, a senior advisor turned to General Liu Hong.
They are planning something. The Americans will not accept surrender.
Liu Hong nodded.
Then neither will we.
He turned to a waiting officer.
Make contact with Moscow. It's time we took control of this situation ourselves.
Deep below the ocean, the final message. In the vast, glowing depths of the Mariana Trench, Kelmar stood in the grand chamber of the Wanaar. Projected before him was a vision of Earth, the swirling blues and greens of a world on the edge of either salvation or ruin. He could feel the fear pulsing through the human race. He could feel their anger, their defiance. They still thought they had a choice. That illusion had to end.
Send the final message. If they resist, we take full control.
Avan nodded, and in that moment, the sky shuddered again. The world would hear them one last time. Chapter 6, The Last Warning. The final message came at midnight UTC. No screens flickered. No technology was hijacked. This time, the Wanaar spoke directly into the minds of every human being alive.
This is your final warning. You have been given the chance to change course, to step back from the abyss, but some among you still refuse. If you do not disarm, if you do not halt your path of destruction, we will do it for you.
And then, the world changed forever. The first strike. At exactly 12:05 a.m. UTC, something impossible happened. Deep beneath the Nevada desert, in one of the United States' most classified military bunkers, an entire nuclear stockpile vanished. Not detonated, not disabled, simply. At the same time, in a hidden Russian facility in the Ural Mountains, a general watched in horror as his final warheads dematerialized, leaving nothing but cold steel launch silos behind. In China, France, Israel, Pakistan, India, and North Korea, the same event played out. The last remaining nuclear weapons on Earth ceased to exist, and this time there was no denying it. The era of nuclear war was over. The rebellion, But not everyone saw it as peace. In the darkest corners of military command rooms, a new faction emerged. The Ghost Command, a coalition of defense officials, war profiteers, and world leaders who refused to accept Wanaar rule. They believed in war, they thrived on it, and now their greatest weapons were gone. In an underground base somewhere in Antarctica, they gathered in secret.
The Wanaar think they've won. They've only just started a war they can't finish.
The others nodded, because Ghost Command had something the Wanaar didn't know about. A weapon buried so deep, even the Wanaar hadn't detected it. And now, it was humanity's last hope for dominance. The Wanaar's next move. Kelmar and his council watched from the depths. They could feel the resistance growing. They had hoped humanity would choose peace. But now, they saw the truth. Some would never stop fighting. If they would not stop, then the Wanaar would stop them.
Kelmar turned to his advisors.
Across the oceans, the Wanaar's ships rose once more. This time, they would not simply warn. This time, they would act. Chapter 7, The War We Didn't Want. It had been 72 hours since the world's nuclear arsenals vanished. The general population, stunned, confused, and for many, relieved, began to hope that this might mean true peace. But those in power, the military-industrial elite, the intelligence agencies, and the secret war factions hidden within governments, had not surrendered. They had regrouped, and now they were about to strike back. Antarctica, the last weapon, deep beneath the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, hidden within an abandoned Cold War-era facility, Ghost Command gathered around the only weapon humanity had left. A device that was never supposed to exist. A graviton disruptor, designed in secret by rogue defense scientists who had been trying to counter an extraterrestrial invasion before it ever happened. It was untested, it was unstable, and it was humanity's last hope of fighting the Wanaar. General Douglas Haines, standing before the silent weapon, turned to his gathered forces.
The politicians have bowed, the weak have surrendered, but we will fight.
The room rumbled with agreement.
The Wanaar believe they are gods. They believe they can dictate our destiny, but I tell you now, we will take our world back.
He raised a fist.
The first strike happens tonight.
The soldiers, mercenaries, and shadow operatives surrounding him saluted as one. And the countdown began. The Wanaar's move, Kelmar already knew. He had seen their minds, their thoughts, their fear. Even as millions of humans accepted peace, there were always those who would seek war. From the depths of the Mariana Trench, the Wanaar's greatest warships, vessels that had not left their city in thousands of years, rose from the abyss. They breached the surface, emerging in all the major oceans of the world. In the skies, UAPs streaked across the continents, positioning themselves near every military base still operational. The Wanaar did not want to rule humanity, but they would not let war continue.
Kelmar gave his final order. Neutralize Ghost Command. Destroy their weapon before they use it.
And with that, the first battle of the last war began. Chapter 8, The First Battle, burying ancient secrets beneath ice that had never known war. Until now, beneath the surface, in the deepest recesses of a forgotten Cold War-era base, Ghost Command prepared to strike. The graviton disruptor, their last and most dangerous weapon, was charged and ready. A weapon so unstable it could tear apart spacetime itself. And they were about to use it. Antarctica, Ghost Command HQ. General Douglas Haines stood before the control panel, staring at the countdown. T-minus 90 seconds. The disruptor would release an energy pulse capable of disabling every Wanaar craft within a 10,000-mile radius, or so they hoped. If it failed, it could collapse the atmosphere itself. Haines didn't care.
Prepare for detonation.
The engineers, sweating despite the sub-zero temperatures, worked furiously. T-minus 60 seconds. Then the alarms blared. Something was moving above them. Lots of somethings. Haines turned to a soldier.
Give me the external feeds.
The monitors flickered, and then his stomach dropped. The Wanaar arrive. The Wanaar ships had found them. They didn't descend from the sky. They rose from beneath the ice. A dozen silent silver vessels, moving like ghosts, cut through the glacial surface, hovering in place. And then they attacked. The first pulse wave shattered the base's outer defense turrets in an instant, ripping them from their mounts and sending metal debris flying. Soldiers screamed, scrambling for weapons that would do nothing against the incoming force. The second pulse disabled communications. The base was now cut off from the world. T-minus 30 seconds. Haynes gritted his teeth.
Fire the weapon now!
The chief engineer slammed the activation key. The graviton disruptor hummed, glowing as it prepared to unleash its unknown horror upon the world. The strike, deep beneath the ocean, in the heart of the Wanaar capital, Kelmar felt the weapon activate. He had hoped they wouldn't go this far. Now he had no choice.
Initiate override.
Avan nodded. A pulse of telepathic energy surged from the Wanaar city, racing across the planet at the speed of thought. Antarctica, seconds from disaster. The disruptor glowed blinding white, its charge reaching full power. T-minus 10 seconds. Haynes grinned. The engineer pressed the final launch key. Nothing happened. The room fell silent. The weapon had died. All power shut down at once. The monitors went black. The lights flickered off. And then the entire base trembled. The Wanaar were coming inside. The fall of Ghost Command. Explosions rocked the corridors as Wanaar drones flooded the base, disabling all remaining defenses. Soldiers fired blindly. Bullets did nothing. Ghost Command had minutes left. Haynes backed away from the control panel, his face twisted with rage.
No, this can't be happening.
But it was. The Wanaar had won. As the drones approached, he grabbed his sidearm, turning it on himself. But before he could pull the trigger, a shadow loomed over him. Kelmar had arrived. His eyes met Haynes', and in that moment, Haynes saw everything. The truth of the Wanaar, the history of Mars, the reasons for peace, and then darkness. Ghost Command was no more. The aftermath. The world never learned about the final battle. The governments that had backed Ghost Command denied its existence. The Wanaar never spoke of it. The war that almost happened had been averted. But humanity had been changed forever. The dawn of a new era. In the months that followed, the United Nations, under Wanaar supervision, ratified the first global disarmament treaty. Climate policies were enacted that forced corporations and governments to comply with planet-saving regulations. The Wanaar did not rule. They simply ensured humanity stayed on course. And for the first time in history, peace became the norm, not the exception. But somewhere, in the farthest depths of space, a new mystery loomed. The Wanaar had not come to Earth alone. Something else had followed them. And one day, it would arrive. But that is another story. Epilogue, The Watchers Beyond. The world had changed. For the first time in recorded history, war was no longer inevitable. Nuclear weapons were gone. The climate was being restored. The Wanaar did not govern, but they ensured humanity stayed on course. Yet, despite all this progress, unease lingered in the minds of those who understood the bigger picture. Because the Wanaar had not just fled to Earth from a dying Mars. The secret that remained buried, deep within the Wanaar capital, far below the Mariana Trench, Kelmar stood before a sealed chamber, his expression unreadable. Behind him, Avan approached cautiously.
You have not told them.
Kelmar's eyes remained fixed on the chamber. It was not a vault. It was a prison, and inside it, something stirred.
They are not ready,
Kelmar said. Avan hesitated.
and when they arrive,
Kelmar turned, his voice low.
then humanity will face a test greater than any before.
Avan frowned.
And if they fail,
Kelmar closed his eyes.
then we will all burn together.
Beyond the solar system, light years away, in the deep black of interstellar space, something moved. A ship, enormous, silent, watching. They had waited for thousands of years. Now, at last, they had found the lost colony, and the hunt was about to begin. The end,